Okay, welcome back, everybody. First off, I'd like a recommendation to approve the personnel report as offered by Ms. Beggs.
So moved.
Ms. Stevens, may I have a second? Mr. Bailey?
Yeah.
Okay, you guys said it at the same time.
Okay.
All in favor?
It doesn't matter.
Okay. Personnel report is passed. Next, we're going to vote on the millage rate and the budgets. Ms. Houston.
We can pull up the decision. Yeah. So here's our decision tonight. We have 3 public hearings. We set a tentative rate of 18.5 mils. We have 3 public hearings. One was attended, and we had great discussions. And it was, I just wanted to do a shout out to Joe Van because he he's a member of the Georgia Club, and most of those people, a lot of those people came, and he really helped me with the presentation with talking about it and being able to communicate their concerns. And help each other, I think. So we are proposing a millage rate of 18.5, which has been our millage rate since 2007.
Okay.
Question?
Do we have a motion to approve the millage rate as proposed? Mr. Bailey, a second? All in favor? Millage rate is passed.
All right, now we're moving into our budget. So we want to approve the general fund budget at $144,724,016, and then the other funds budget at $68,546,252. We had 2 public hearings on this and none.
Any discussion? Motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Kelly, second by Mr. Bailey, all in favor? The budget is passed. Thank you, Ms. Houston. Good job. Thank you. All righty. We'll move on and discuss our meeting for, it'll be actually in 3 weeks, the 13th. So, Mr. Kane, Vince, you'll do the invocation and the pledge. We'll approve the minutes, both of this meeting. We'll approve the agenda. We'll go through any committee reports. Dr. McMichael, you'll have a couple of recognitions, it looks like. Okay. We may or may not have any visitors. Moving on to superintendent reports. Dr. Green.
Yes, the communications report is there for you to review. Unless you have any questions, this just stands for your review.
Very good. Any discussion? Okay. Should we come back to Ms. Houston? I think she's over. Yeah. Okay. Mr. Parental? Joe?
Look at pictures and talk about West Side for quite some time. They didn't there and do that again, but we've also got an update on our summer renovation projects, and so we can kind of scroll through and look at those. And again, these are building finishes, so flooring, paint, lights, and Olson back. Conditions come along great. That facade going down the outside and the field house coming together in the field. Football season last year, so it'll be nice. Inside here. The inside is buttoned up, ready to go. Really, just good. Time the outside together. Everything like that. But
Joe, can you go back up 2 pictures to this? Is this the next one? Down, I'm sorry. that right there. Are those tiles or, I mean, are those rubberized tiles that can be picked up and replaced, or is that actually tile,
That's carpet tile.
carpet tile?
Yeah. This
That's
is
carpet.
similar to this here.
They're the ones that can take the square out
Yeah.
by
replace it.
itself.
Okay,
Correct.
and so these are for the classrooms, and then this is not, obviously.
Well, that's a typical classroom there with the vinyl tile like out.
Okay.
The carpet squares will be.
That looks like it'd be a band room.
Yeah, it could be band
You see the
floors
soundboard.
or admin area, media center, that's where the carpet tiles are going to be. We don't have those in the classroom. The only place we really do is the bathroom.
Okay, I was just thinking in terms of all the carpet we had to rip up last year for COVID.
Right.
Yeah, makes sense. We're trying
It's just
to get rid of carpet as fast as we can go. in those
Okay.
places.
Well, I can see it in a band room or someplace like that.
It's mainly media and admin and then, yeah, like the kitchen.
Okay.
Treat for family or not, but, the typical classroom now is vinyl tile. And, floor finish on. So,
What is that room there with the roll-up door?
that's our ag in there. It's a really neat setup. They've got a canopy on the back of the building there, and it leads out to the back lawn area there. There's a turnaround, some trailers can come in there and move back out. So really well thought out plan. I thought by Kendall and Mr. Smith out there. The west side is trying to meet the needs that they have. That all the programs really, agriculture in particular, and have a nice weight room out there as well, field house. So. That's the west side is moving right along, and again, we're really just kind of focusing on the exterior right now at this point. These other projects, these are summer projects. Roll through those quickly, kind of describe them as we go through. Okay, so Molson deck, front office area is getting pretty significant remodel there. These are the corridors there, following that same system standard, that porcelain tile that we're using in most of our remodels now.
It's pretty.
Sort of a random pattern there. There's the gym that's been repainted, the wood floors going in, let's see.
That's nice.
No rubber floor, huh?
Excuse me?
No more rubber floor.
Yeah, Stevens got on to a long time ago.
You have to admit, they look a lot better and they are a lot better.
They say a lot of it was pretty good. Yeah, I love them. They're great. That's what we need. So now these, Bear Creek and Hammond Morris, these are primarily just taking the classroom carpet out and replacing with vinyl tile. Kendall and I affectionately refer to it as a warm carpet. Who's winning that war right now?
It was a glorious and necessary war.
Yeah.
And we're winning.
Every floor's got
I'm
its.
not a fan of carpet.
Plus, it's vinyl tile is different, but it is a better solution, particularly in this environment. So those are the buildings that Charles Black is working on with rail construction. I haven't been to that many other gyms in our region, but I gotta believe that Appalachia's gonna have one of the best ones. And Wyman's looks great too, I think, but that picture doesn't really do it justice, and it hasn't even been painted yet, but the floor's been redone, and it just looks fantastic. I love the way that turned out.
Yeah, it looks great.
And so there again, your classroom getting the vinyl tile, and the corridors getting the. And Auburn Elementary School, and you're seeing the same pattern here, but that face of it, the media around it. over and it's coming right along well. These guys don't waste any time, we got right in here. Speed and their folks, turned out of the way, they're awesome. In fact, that is, so we have to take that. Any questions? Any of that?
Looks really good.
Yeah, looks really good. And I'm surprised they've gotten that far so fast. It's impressive.
Make really good progress.
Great job. Thanks, Joe.
I do have a question, because we sat here, back when I was on the board before, and I know you weren't at the head, but when Jay Grant was here, we kept hearing why we needed to have the carpet, and I remember Lynn, when we had one of the pieces of carpet that it could withstand however many 20-something years that we would have it in there, and I think she took some coffee and threw it on there to make sure it was resistant.
We have it.
But my concern is, she's only been on the board 25 years, and now less than 25 years later, this is taxpayer money. We're ripping all that out, and we hear Dr. McMichael saying, oh, we're getting it out as quick as we can. This is taxpayer money, and great, we're doing it, and we say these things need a facelift, but I've had some taxpayers ask me recently, y'all are spending a bunch of money and you're doing this. And I know, and I told them how great Jennifer is, and she's great, but we've got to think about these things when we're doing this. Are we gonna have somebody else in the next 15 years come up here and then say, oh, well, now we got to put carpet back in? And I understand because of COVID that this is the best way to go, but that should have been, when we think about doing things in our home, we just replaced our dishwasher and it's lasted 20 years. We talk about going the low end and don't mind replacing it in 15, in 4 or 5 years ago, the high end, and it should last 20, 25 years, which it did, our appliances do. But we need to think about that when we're doing these things in our schools too.
Sure.
Because that was just mentioned to me a couple of days ago by somebody that's been in our school district and was an administrator in our school system about how much money this district's been spending recently.
It's a fair comment, it is. And like I say, there's no flooring solution out there that's a silver bullet. There's not. Every one of them, every one of those dogs has a leak on it.
Right.
And vinyl tile is no different, porcelain tile is no different, carpet is no different. We have good carpet out there. I think it's a better product when it comes to acoustics in the classroom, but we found it very difficult to keep it clean. I've got 3 kids at home, and when they get done eating, there's a little bit of a mess there.
Right.
So we put 30 into it. All of our classrooms became cafeterias last year. And that's a lot to ask of the custodial staff and school to maintain carpet in that environment. So I'm not trying to make excuses,
Right,
but we're in a different place now than we were 15 years ago.
right.
And so I understand where you're coming from. It's a fair question. I think it is, but I think long-term, this is a better solution for us. And
Yeah, I just want to make sure we don't flip-flop based on whoever's up here, because the taxpayers are still here and are asking those questions, depending on whoever may be sitting on the board at the time, or whoever may be the superintendent or in that position, because we're still responsible, to make sure we ask those questions.
I agree. 100%.
And I think this is the best, because again, that was one of our concerns back then, was because Lynn asked that question, I asked that question, why are we going carpet? And I do remember her specifically taking the coffee and throwing it on the square to make sure.
There was a big
It
push
did
in
come
the
up.
early 2000s for carpet in schools. That's when I was actually working on my doctorate and my doctorate's in building and design for elementary schools, actually. Big push from the carpet companies, a lot of research being funded in carpets at that time. And they were new carpets, and they were different kinds, and they have lasted. Like I said, we've still got some that are 15 years, but time has now shown us that it's a lot easier to keep up the tile. And some of us leaned on that back then too, but.
Well, and one of our other concerns was the chemicals that come in, and then you've got kids with asthma.
Right. And
That
that's why
was
when
one of
we
our
do
concerns
it,
back
we want to
then.
know where we can take the sections out. The issue with carpet, one of the main issues is when it does get dirty, when it's put down in full rooms, you have to take the whole room up, and then we have to put more carpet down. And with these type of tiles that we are using now, you can replace one instead of the whole kit and caboodle. But it's a good point. The other piece of it too, and if I'm not mistaken, Joe, this is Appalachia and some of these other, we're on the schedule for renovation. So this is coming out of state money, which is still taxpayer money, absolutely, but it's money that needs to be spent on those type of things, so that they're factored in, budgeted in for that, so.
Well, since that was just
It's not
mentioned to me a couple days ago, I just wanted to
Everyone to think
ask.
it's a random thing.
State and there's also ARP funds, you know, federal funds that are helping.
Yeah.
To pay for these replacements. So, yeah, it's a moment of opportunity, you know, to try to grab.
And we didn't
some
need them
of that.
classrooms 15, 20 years ago. When we, actually, even before COVID, we were doing that with breakfasts and things like that too. So it's just kind of keeping up with the times. It's,
As far as thinking about the future, thinking long term, you probably noticed the reoccurring theme of not just, BCT, but of course, of being a random path. So that in the future, if one's damaged, we can replace it.
Yep.
Put it on back in, even if it's a different color, because of that random path.
replace the whole dash.
Accent lines were not always. So future replacements may be selective replacements versus holistic
Right.
replacements. So
Take the tile up.
we're trying to think on that.
I think as long as I've been on the board, I've never experienced a time ever where I felt like the executive board wasn't being a good steward of the taxpayer money. But I would say, to Beverly's point, when we have people who ask questions like this, two things, obviously, it's our job to educate them, but also when you have budget meetings and nobody even bothers to show up to them, and I think Jennifer had too, then, you know, obviously, people aren't too terribly worried about it. So I say we continue.
It's always
to
good.
trust
We
them.
always want to hear from them because, you know,
Right.
Jennifer shows all the time with the meetings on the
Yeah.
millage rate, once it's explained to, and they.
Yeah,
And that's a
understand
time
the
where she really
intricacies that
breaks
go in
everything
behind it.
down and, you know,
That's
but for us, showing our support of you guys and the decisions that you make, I think is really important. I mean, I trust you.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jill. Appreciate you. Ms. Houston, you want to join us again and talk about your business services report?
I just have one invoice over here. The invoices paid between $10,000 and $24,999. There's just one, the Reading Warehouse, and it was paid out of consolidated funds for $15,275. And it's for summer reading books for students, so those were sent on the students for the summer. And that was for Bethlehem Elementary School. And that's all I got tonight.
Thank you. Dr. Moulton?
I welcome Dr. David Leland to the podium to give us information regarding our upcoming project.
Awesome. Welcome, Dr. Beelan.
Thank you. Good evening. It's my pleasure to share some information with you all tonight. About once every 5 years, we have a team that comes into the district and visits to evaluate the quality with which we operate. And if everything goes well and we pay all the money associated with being a member of their association, we get a certificate to hang on the wall to say that we're accredited for another 5 years. Well, the last time we did that was 2017, and so now it's time to do it again, just like this yesterday. We're going for accreditation, for all these meetings and preparing. Dr. McMichael and his infinite wisdom recognize that they are currently doing virtual visits, so they don't come on site and go into all the nooks and crannies throughout the school system. And so we are going to have ours in October this year, and it will be a virtual visit. So we'll be virtual visits this entire year. So we're doing our virtual visit, and we scheduled it in October. We typically do it in spring, but I like the idea of doing it in October and kind of getting it out right at the end of the school year and kind of moving on with our operations. So I just want to share a little bit of information with you tonight about Cognia. You may not recognize the name Cognia, and that's because it's fairly new. Typically, in between the 5 years that they come, their name changes. It seems like, so when I started in education 28 years ago, they were called SACS, and then I think they were called SACS Casey, and then they were called Advanced Ed last time they were here, and this time they were called Cognia when they arrived. So, but they've been doing this since about 1895, so a long time. That they look at they have certain standards that they look at and evaluate schools and school systems by, and how well we meet those standards, and that is what they will come here to do. They also will look at how well we implement school improvement processes. So what are the standards? Well, there are 3 different domains in which cognitive looks at the school system. And the first one looks at leadership capacity. And you all will be a little bit a part of that particular domain as far as the mission and the vision and the beliefs that we have as a school system and how we interact with the Board of Education. You probably have seen recently in the news that there's a school system close by that Cognitive has gotten involved with, doing some investigation. Actually, there's been one on each side of us that Cognitive has done some investigation. So we fortunately have a really good working relationship between our board and our superintendent and the schools. And I think most of the time when folks kind of run into some trouble, it's more to do with more at the board level, in my experience in the years that I've been in education, that there's most school systems that had time to come take a look at how the board and the superintendent and all that stuff functions. But they do look all the way down, in addition to those leadership capacity standards, and there's 11 of those, they also look at learning capacity. And there are 12 standards in this domain. And it pretty much just looks at the learning culture and the extent to which we have high expectations for learning in the district and what types of quality programs and services that we're providing our students. And then the third one gets a little bit more into, Joe was just up here talking, it gets a little bit more into resources. And it's usually, they take a look at just what you were talking about with resource capacity and how well we're using our resources to benefit students within the school system. So there you see some bulleted points about some of the aspects of the 8 standards related to resource capacity. So those are the 3 domains. I think if you add all that, it comes to 31 and 32 standards, so 31 standards total. So tonight, what I mainly want to share with you is what we have to do to get ready for this visit. So I'm going to slow down a little bit and take a little bit more time here. You know, someone brings water up to the podium, and I say water, not water, but that means we'll talk for a while. So y'all just say, I get wrong out. I'm not going to do that. The first thing that we have to do is the superintendent will work on an executive summary for the visiting team, and that kind of just gives them a quick snapshot of what's going on in our school district. So we'll work on that and have that ready. Shortly after school gets started, before we make anybody angry, we'll administer, review, and share the results of the stakeholder survey. We'll get some stakeholder surveys early in the year. Everybody's still pretty happy with this. We will survey parents, students, and teachers. I think of 3 surveys that they require us to give, and we'll analyze those results and share the results of our review of that data with the visiting team. We must document our processes that we have in place, especially in the area of school improvement, and provide artifacts that we are implementing those processes. So different types of documents and things like that that show that we're doing the things that we say we're doing. The most challenging part, in my opinion, of the visit is reviewing and rating the school system internally on each of those 31 standards using 5 different criteria across those 3 domains. So I'll show you the 5 criteria in just a moment that we're going to use. So what we're going to do to tackle this is kind of like an elephant. You can just, I've never eaten an elephant, but they say you eat it just one bite at a time. So what we're going to do is we're going to form 3 system teams composed of both district and school administrators. And they're going to be formed along those 3 different domains. The school administrators, once we meet, we'll go back and consult with leadership teams, teacher leaders, and staff members at their school site. We will collect and organize all artifacts that show the work that we're doing here at the district level and at school level. And then we'll correlate those to those standards within each of the 3 domains. It sounds simple, doesn't it? And then we'll compile and review student performance data. I think this person is going to help us greatly with being able to pull that data and then create a protocol that we will, as district and school leaders, will go through and analyze that data and decide what it all means. We'll put it in a little synopsis for the visiting team. We'll also provide that as well as all the other artifacts to the visiting team when they come. So on the next slide, what you're going to see is those 5 areas. So for each of the 31 standards, we have to look at the three I's, initiate, improve, and impact. And within that, we have to look at each standard in terms of the level of engagement, the level of implementation, the results that we're getting, the sustainability of those efforts, and how well it's all embedded in who we are and what we do. So y'all can imagine that's going to be quite a task to look at that many standards, that many ways. But that is pretty much what the process involves each time that this team comes. So if we look at the next slide, I want to just share with you a little bit about what will happen when the team connects with us virtually. The visiting team is going to interview all of these groups, the superintendent, the board of education. So in your situation, what they are going to do, you'll see this on the schedule in just a moment. We already have dates and times identified, which are decided by our lead evaluator from Cognitive. But the board of education, it will be the chairperson gets interviewed by themselves. And then the rest of the board is split into two groups so that there's not four within those two groups. There's not a majority in any of those two groups. So that's basically the way that they will do it. They'll split their visiting team in three groups and interview you all at the same time in three separate meetings. Some of the other groups that will get interviewed by the team are principals, such as principals, instructional coaches. I don't have it on here, but many specialists, counselors, teachers, students, parents, and there will also be a community group. And then before they leave, they will take time after gathering all the evidence to rate the system on each of those 31 standards on the 5 different criteria in each of those 3 domains. So this is the schedule for what day 1 will look like. And this is when they are doing most of the interviews of the superintendent, the board, and the system staff up here. So we'll be split into operational, instructional, almost just each side of the building. It's the way it will be organized. And they will interview each of these groups on October the 18th, which is our first day. And your interviews are scheduled for 11 to 12 based on your availability. And hopefully you will all be able to make yourself available that day, or at least most everybody. This is what the second day looks like. There are 4 sets of focus interviews that go on that day. They'll interview principals in 2 groups by elementary and secondary. The same thing with assistant principals. They'll interview our instruction coaches all as one group. And then they'll interview teachers, about 1 to 2 teachers per school. And that they will also be separated by elementary and secondary. And then on the final day of the visit, there will be 3 more sets of interviews. They'll interview students. At elementary level, they start with 4th and 5th grade, and it goes up through secondary. They'll interview parents, the community, media specialists, and counselors. And then at 4:30, they will have a meeting with the superintendent and any guests that he wants to invite for them to go over some of the high-level themes, findings, and what our next steps are. If y'all will recall, in the past, they would do a call board meeting to share that report. They do not do that anymore. So we don't need to call a board meeting that afternoon. They will give us a very short summary report, and of course, we'll update you all on how we do, what's in that report. And then within about 30 days, we get a much longer, very detailed report. Typically, unless they change things, they will always give you one area to work on. There'll be some accommodations or something that you're really well, but they'll always give you at least one thing to work on. Last time that they were here, the largest area that I recall, and there were a couple of them, the second one's going to come to you right now, but the largest area that we were to work on was the use of data in the classroom level to inform instruction. And due to the leadership of Dr. Thompson and Ms. Persinger, we have made tremendous strides in that. You will recall that after that, we adopted math and academic progress that's given, and we've expanded that K into high school now. So we use that data. It's extremely valuable data to help us measure the progress that students are making in learning steps into the university. I think we've been pleased to come back and see the progress that we've made in terms of use of data all the way back to classroom. There are very complementary needs that at the district level. We make they felt like students could all the next. So at this time, I'd like to entertain any questions you have about the process, or anything else related to our tracking and reaccreditation visit.
So Dr. Beelan, you're kind of the point guard, you're running,
I'll have.
You're the liaison.
The logistics of it.
Okay.
And, I work directly with the lead evaluator, and she and I work extensively to kind of get to this point. And we have some meetings set up, already 3 meetings for system leadership to get together to go through those standards, break all that down. So we do have an internal timeline, for what we're going to do to have everything ready, the ratings done, the survey result done and reviewed, and the student achievement data, looked at and reported to the.
doing it virtually. Do you see it as less intrusive than when they're on site?
Well, it's not that we mind finding knowing, but it does tend to be a bit of disruption.
Yeah.
And a distraction, just to be quite honest with you.
I can
There's
see
no
that.
way that someone can't come in and do a distraction like that. So you get some data, valuable data, when they come in and review instruction in your classroom. But what we're doing right now with instructional apps and some other practices that we have internally that we're now doing that. I don't feel like we're missing that much by them coming in and going on classrooms and evaluating what they see in terms of instruction. So I'm glad we're doing it virtually. I really don't like it. I think this is the way to go. And you know what, they may decide at some point they're going to change it virtually. Certainly cut down on costs associated with the kids. Significant.
To pay for hotels and travel and all that stuff. And I think you're right, Ed. I think as we progressed, the way when they used to come in and go through and they'd see a classroom here and a classroom there, and they used to come to all the schools years ago. I mean, every school got a visit. They went through almost every classroom. And that's slowly been diminishing. I think last time they went to maybe 2 or 3 schools and went to classrooms. But I think with the data that we're getting from the walkthroughs and those type of things, we can actually show them a better picture than they could get in one day anyway, because we can show it over time. So I think it's going to be great. I think it may very well be the way they're going from just the.
If you'll
Seems like
recall,
less
they
expensive.
used to do accreditation at school level. And I was in Monroe County from 2004 to 2004, 2006. And Monroe was one of the first districts to get district accreditation. It was a big deal that they switched from doing school accreditation to
Still was school.
accreditation. So it's been going on now, I guess, since around 2004. I think they were on the first one, they pulled it first one, and then after that, everybody's like, yeah, we need to do that. And they come to that. And they may go virtual visits, and they decide that goes better to them as well.
Great.
Got questions?
Having been part of these for a while, I do recall that they would come in a group, a large group of folks, and they're very, very thorough.
Correct.
I'm wondering if they're going to be able to be as thorough virtually, so I guess we'll see when that happens. I certainly hope they can, not just for the expense, but for the fact that it was really time consuming on the part of everybody, especially the central office
It
and
is,
the
isn't it?
principals and that sort of thing. So I hope this takes less time, but they can still be as thorough as they were, because essentially they were very, very, very thorough every time I've seen them come in.
And this thing, and I'll tell you this, I think it will be, because what you didn't see in the schedule is the amount of time that they spend. That's just the things that involve us.
Right.
So there are a lot of other meetings throughout the day where they are looking at, one of the biggest things that they do when it comes to looking on artifacts, to be honest with you, that's a lot of it. They do go into classrooms and look at what's going on in the classroom, and do classroom observations. That's really not the only thing to lose about the virtual visit. The amount of time that they have devoted to interviewing us and going through to see if what we present to them matches what we say is basically the same process when they're on site. So I think we will get that. And I agree with you. We felt like the feedback that we get is valuable and it helps us grow.
Yeah.
So I think we will still get that, even though it's going to be virtual.
I hope so.
I'm going to be very interested to see how it works, because it's like I said, like you were saying, David, I've been on both sides of it. I've been an evaluator and the evaluatee, and it's some of the best feedback we get
Absolutely.
as a
And
district.
it's extra. 'Cause a lot of times
For
we think
external,
we
right,
know
but I
what's
mean,
in
it's
ourselves.
actionable, it's always actionable, the
Yeah.
things they give us are always, something that you don't see because you're in the house all the time, and then someone else comes in and they say, oh, you've got that little scuff over there you need to take care of, so it's really, really valuable input,
How often does this happen again?
every 5 years.
Dr. Wheeling, in the past, as far as the board's involvement, almost want to use the word training, but so that they used to get the board together, so we sort of know what to expect.
That's important.
It can, because we have a few members that have not been through this process, so it won't seem so daunting. You think maybe we could set something like that up? Is that something that?
Absolutely.
I'm glad to.
Be glad to.
I think one of the last two times was after we became a charter system and things were a little bit different during that accreditation. And I think it'd be helpful for the whole board if we just.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
That's
thank
great.
you.
We'll lay something on for the fall, September-ish.
All you gotta do is have your A game on, know everything you know about the school system. No, it's a piece of paper.
Gotta be on your feet during that interview.
Yep,
I think there's certain things that you need to just be very prepared for.
Would you like for us to, well, we work out details later, if you want to know, if you want to dig in a little bit to the standards and see what the standards are, so you're prepared to say, you're going to some questions, especially in the leadership domain, and I'll be sure to keep you all, a copy of the standard that maybe you can, disseminate to the board.
Yeah, and after y'all done a lot of y'all,
It's when you let you see,
Preparation.
yeah, absolutely.
it'd be helpful to me anyway.
Probably good 2 days if we can review with them the last feedback from the last 5 years, so they can kind of see how that's
The
presented.
exit report,
Yeah,
yes, sir.
the exit report.
You have to get you on the exit report. That, if you look at the exit report, that would help a lot, what was. Absolutely.
I would assume in terms of standards, it changes,
The
right?
standards change every time.
So, I mean, that's important for us to know.
I think I've got my suspicion, but yes, the standards change. I don't think I've done it ever when they were the same.
So my next question is to Dr. McMichael. Who are your invited guests gonna be?
I don't know, we'll have to wait, and get a little closer
I
and
think
see,
it might be a good idea to have a board there for this.
more than likely.
Just saying.
I know just.
That's kind of the way they've done it in the past too. I think in the past, they would give us, like, I think we had the cabinet and a few of the directors, David,
Yeah,
and
and
some
it's-
others, and then they came into the board
Yeah.
afterwards. That's the way it went last time.
They-
We had a called meeting, so I think that would be appropriate.
The lead evaluator seen, and I'll tell Ms. Stevens, Peters, that this was, she's seen to that, for that to be more their preference, that maybe the board chair is there, but not the whole board. But I think that's, as far as I know, it says invite yes, I think that's the tradition.
Let's not vigorously disagree with anybody at this stage.
Not until they're done.
Don't tell
I'm
them
just
anyway.
saying, I don't know why they would not. want the full
I
board.
don't either. I'll
I'll
talk with you.
Uh-huh. Indeed. Well, I mean, that's just kind of auditing 101. You don't make them mad when they walk in the door.
Obviously, but I don't know why they switched from there, honestly. That was a surprise, that's one major difference over our previous experience. Because it was typically, they would report out. And she very clear that she wanted to invite the chair that time, it's basically what she said to me.
Find out.
I will delve into that.
Yeah, we'll do it at the pleasure of the board.
Thank you, Dr. Beal. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Ms. Beggs, anything else for the group?
No.
Okay. We'll move into the consent agenda. We have some old business that Dr. Green,
Yeah, so last meeting, we put a policy revision on the table, so this upcoming meeting, and it was just a minor change taking from titles that no longer exist out of the policy, and so now we bring that back, and that's that we move to the table, and that you vote to approve that revision. We didn't receive any comments on that, so.
thank you. Consent agenda, everybody? Are we good? Okay. Dr. Wood. Looks like you've been on vacation.
Yes. Nice, rested, and ready to present. Okay, so good evening. I have the pleasure this evening. You'll see several items to present to the superintendent and the board, starting with some courses that we would like to start offering at FAFSA. So the first course recommendation is for sculpture. And this is visual arts and sculpture 1 and sculpture 2 as fine arts electives for high school students. There is the course description and the course number. I also included attachment of the standards. So it's the superintendent recommends improving courses, the visual arts sculpture 1 and visual arts sculpture 2 as fine arts electives for high school students. And they'll start with offering this at FAFSA. Any questions about that course or courses? Huh?
Textbook,
Nope,
or something, no
Yeah,
financial
no.
impact, so.
nope, they've got teachers to teach it. Yep.
Consent agenda?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, moving on. So also adding some new courses out at FAFSA. These will be our visual arts drawing and painting 1 and drawing and painting 2 as fine arts electives for high school students. And this is the introducing drawing and painting techniques and a variety of drawing and painting media. Again, the standards are attached there. So the superintendent recommends improving courses drawing and painting 1 and 2 as fine arts electives for our high school students. Again, these will start at FAFSA and no financial impact at this time. Any questions on painting and drawing 1 and 2?
Okay, consent agenda?
Yes.
Okay. Photography.
All right, moving right along. So we would like to start offering visual arts photography 1 right now at FAFSA. It introduces photography as an art form, and it covers the historical development of photography and photographic design and cultural influences. So the superintendent recommends improving the course visual arts and photography 1 as fine arts electives for our high school students, again, starting at FAFSA.
Consent agenda? Okay,
Moving right along. All right, so this one is repertoire dance. And so we are asking to offer advanced repertoire dance 1 and 2 as fine arts electives at the high school. And these are intermediate level dance technique classes that will be offered, and you can see it goes into all the different forms of dance. So the superintendent recommends improving courses advanced repertory dance 1 and 2 as fine arts electives for high school students, again, starting out at FAFSA.
This might be a rhetorical question, but are we already offering the course for this before the advanced courses that we are,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, so these are advanced levels. So as students go through dance 1 through 4, and then you'll see the difference between this one and then the next one. So they can choose a path to become more into the technical side of the forms of dance versus the next one, which is a little bit more performance.
Okay.
Any questions on repertoire dance?
consent agenda? Okay,
Okay. So the next item, and this one's called performance ensembles. And so this one's a little different than the other one. This is more about increasing awareness to the public by performing. And so students would have sort of a path direction. If they want to get more into technical, not that they couldn't also do performing, but this is more for ensuring that students understand logistics, time management, maybe the directing of the performances that they would be putting on. So the superintendent recommends improving courses performance ensemble 1 and 2 as fine arts electives for high school students. Again, starting out at FAFSA.
consent agenda?
Yes.
One. This is a request to start offering forest science, and Appalachia has made this request. And so this will be offered as a science elective for high school students. The course provides entry-level skills for employment in the forest industry and for further study. And it can count as a fourth science. And so the superintendent recommends improving the course for science as a science elective for high school students. And right now, Appalachia has asked to start offering this course for some of their students. Any questions on forest science?
Is there a reason it wouldn't be offered at the other high school?
It can be. So once we get it approved as a course, then it's approved on our course list. And so then the other high schools could. But right now, Appalachia needed some electives for their students, and they had a teacher that had this background in forestry. And so that's why they have asked for the course approval. But yes, once it's approved, it kind of spirals. Once one school starts offering something, they're like, oh, and so, you know, it could come to Waterbury down the road. Any questions on forest science?
Sounds good. Consent agenda. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Wood. Ms. Beggs.
Again, I have two policies to bring forward to you tonight. Both are the result of the this year's legislative session. If you went to the GSBA conference, they may have talked about both of these. They've been getting a lot of attention recently. So the first one is a part of policy GARH, and that's employee leaves and absences. And it is the new paid parental leave. And this entitles any full-time employee who has been here for 6 months or more, and full-time can actually be less than 40 hours a week, but they're considered full-time if they're eligible for either TRS or PSERS retirement. So it entitles them to up to 120 hours of paid parental leave for the birth, adoption, or fostering of a child. So that's a significant expense. We did know ahead of time that we needed to estimate for the budget. And so we did put an estimated $243,000 in the current budget for this leave. Any questions?
Assuming this will put us in compliance with this.
Yes.
Consent agenda.
The superintendent recommends placing this policy on the table for public review to the next regularly scheduled meeting.
So just to be clear, if someone worked for us for several years and had built up some sick leave, they could use that plus another 120 hours if they chose to for maternity leave or whatever.
The way we
Is
have,
that
they
separate?
gave us the option, the way we have included it is that ours will run concurrently with the FMLA or other federal leave to which they're entitled. So if they were entitled to the 12 weeks of FMLA, we'll see this obviously most often for a birth. Typically, the first 6 weeks are eligible for sick leave. That's medical leave, and then an additional 6 weeks for bonding, which is typically unpaid. Now, 3 of those 6 weeks will be paid.
So technically, a teacher could be out of the classroom for almost half a year or 3
It
months.
doesn't extend beyond the 12 weeks, so it doesn't then 15 weeks.
Okay.
It's still the 12 weeks of FMLA.
So in other words, 9 weeks, paid 3 weeks.
Right.
Instead of 6.
And that's probably the most common. There are lots of exceptions to that, but that's what we will see most often.
So out of a typical 9-month contract, they could be out 3 months and be paid for it. Theoretical.
Okay.
Okay. The next policy is GBIA, and this is Teacher Evaluation Appeals. And this law does allow a full-time teacher who has received and accepted their 4th consecutive contract to appeal a summative performance rating of unsatisfactory, which, to be honest, doesn't really even exist in the TEAS platform, or ineffective. They can appeal procedural deficiencies on the part of the person evaluating them, or they can appeal their job performance. So all 3 of these are new. The policy itself is required to outline the precise steps that a teacher must take in order to make such an appeal. And so you'll see that in the policy as well. And again, this is to keep us in compliance with the new bill.
The only question I have about this is number 2, the procedural deficiencies on the part of the local school system in conducting an evaluation. We have procedures in place for this that have been approved. And most of that came from the state in terms of what we had to do. So I don't understand it.
It just gives them the ability to say, if we don't follow one of those procedures, they have the right to appeal the evaluation.
Yeah, so if an administrator didn't follow all the steps they're supposed to, technically, then they could, and they got a poor evaluation, they could say, it was due to that, which then would kick us in to another issue. Also,
This must have gotten lumped in with something in down at the house. This is just,
this was a little bit of a problem.
Yeah.
I think it's been brewing.
yeah, it's silly.
So basically, it's just one more roadblock we would have to overcome if somebody did say that there were procedural deficiencies. It would just take longer for us to go through the process.
Some process that we need to follow.
Seems like every entity is having this type of thing happening in it now, really.
Yeah.
You just follow the news, it seems to be happening everywhere.
So the superintendent is recommending again that this policy be placed on the table for public review until the next regularly scheduled meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Beggs.
Thank you very much.
Joe, Beck.
In our last meeting, we talked about development of our Austin campus and how we believe that a new elementary school, this will be first out of the gate there. That's pretty clear in our minds. It gets a little cloudy when you look beyond that, but the second phase of NASA and the middle school, we can also accommodate both of those facilities out on that campus. I feel like those would be next. Typically a 3-year period from the time you look to begin design to open the doors. So we just want to be prepared for that. We want to get far out ahead of that. And that's the pattern we've been following for a number of years now. Going ahead and getting an architect on board. It doesn't mean we're going to have a set of plans on our desk, 3 months after we sign an architect. We'll let them go as far as we need them to go. And we'll call time out when we need to make sure that we go at the right pace. But we are asking the superintendent to recommend approval of Smallwood Reynolds Stewart Associates Architecture Services for a new middle school. We worked with this firm extensively in the recent past and years ago. They've done an excellent job for us. And so Bill Bears, please make that recommendation.
Any consent agenda?
Quick roll, but
That's, we'll probably be back up here again soon.
Before I ask this question, excuse my ignorance, but why can't we use the same plans multiple times. Is that not, it just doesn't work that way? Or, like I said, I mean, spec schools in essence, I noticed they all kind of start to look alike. So I'm just wondering, why not?
You can, and we have, Dargo and Grambling, or, they're just split, but it's the same footprint, Bethlehem County line, King Morris, Russell, Bear Creek. Same, so we've done that before. It certainly has its advantages, but,
I understand that campus out there is a little different and
It
it
is.
probably needs to have a different feel. Otherwise it would look a little strange. I totally
Right.
understand that, but
And
I was
that's
just
part of it, I
wondering.
mean, there's different things that go into that decision. And, like I said, we employed that technique before and probably will again in the future. But, we feel like that campus.
I understand.
does make a difference.
I'm not against it. I was just wondering.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Joe, I think one of the things we've learned has been that as we build schools and progress and add more students and more services and more classrooms, we sometimes have to redesign how buildings built. Could include security issues or other things too. So they're looking at different things.
Yeah.
As we change, so do the buildings.
Ever evolving, yeah.
Okay, consent agenda? Thank you, Mr. Parental. Dr. Green.
Okay, so I'll bring you yet another policy revision that was brought upon by the legislature this past session. And so we will be recommending placing board policy IDE 3, competitive interscholastic activities for grades 6 through 12 on the table for public review until the next regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Education. This past session, the Georgia legislature passed the Dexter-Mosley Act, which is pretty much like the Tim Tebow Act in that it allows homeschool students to participate on interscholastic and extracurricular activities at the schools that they would be zoned to attend if they were enrolled in public education. That's been something the legislature's been considering for probably over a decade now, and made it through this time. And so we needed to update our policy to accommodate that. And so if you're on the actual policy itself and scroll down to page 2, you'll see the first reference. So we're just taking out the reference to be eligible for participation, the individual must be enrolled full-time in the school that sponsors competitive activity, and replacing that with new language from the law that basically describes that in order to participate, the school system requires resident students other than homeschool students to be enrolled full-time. That keeps it the same for those who are enrolled in our schools. And then unless the student schedule approved by school officials to be different than that. And then otherwise, home study students must enroll in and attempt to complete one qualifying course as defined in state law for each semester of participation. So that just is taking the language in the law and applying it in our policy. That first reference is to grades 6 through 8. The exact same thing is at the very bottom of the policy for grades 9 through 12. This simply brings our current policy in line with new state law.
Okay, so here's my problem with this. It's the last line of this, which says home study students must enroll in and attempt to complete one qualifying course as defined in state law for each semester of participation. Now, somebody needs to tell me what attempt means here, because you either complete it or you don't. And our policy is that if a child is enrolled in sports or athletics and they're not meeting their academic requirements, then they're not supposed to play. Am I right?
Yes, ma'am. And all I can say in response to that is this is the way the state law is written. This is what it says in state law.
Yeah, that I'm sure will be
Yeah, how can we
litigated.
justify having a pass, no play policy if kids don't have to, cannot go to school and still play? That's gonna be something I agree.
Yeah, it's gonna have to be something that, it will happen pretty quickly, I would
I'm
imagine
sure.
somewhere.
You know, what you will see in the paragraphs in the summary of the agenda item is you'll see a little bit more detail in terms of what the law says in terms of the process for how parents apply and that sort of thing. But that particular concern, which I understand and share with you, is specifically out of state law, and this is also a recommendation from GSBA that we make in our policy.
I believe they have to be academically in good standing.
That,
Play before they register.
all the person grading their work at home study.
Well,
Their
that's the
parents.
catch 22 on it. But
So,
Yeah, exactly.
you know,
That's
they
the
are in
issue,
fact
too.
supposed to meet the same standards that our students do. But the homeschool student, the person doing the evaluation of the work is the parent.
Dr. Green, how many students who come to us having been homeschooled for 6, 7, 8 years are actually academically qualified to
Grade
go
level.
into the grade level that they go into?
I don't have an exact number for you, but I'll take you.
Less than
that we find
50%.
students from homeschool all across the spectrum. We find students who would not be up to grade level with our students. We find students who have been successful in studying as well, and they're all over the, you know. So it'd be hard to give you a number of students.
But it's a significant number.
I'm sorry.
It's a significant number.
Yes, ma'am, we have.
More than one or two.
Probably along that entire spectrum.
Dr. Michael, how does it work with digital learning in sports? So if a child is enrolled in the digital academy, does this give them the option to play at
that's
school
my
with
understanding. So
their district? Well, this is gonna get messy.
Is this not,
it's, yeah, it's one of these bills that, as it came through, they did listen to some of the concerns and advice, but this past session, you know, there wasn't a lot of people that could be there to
And like I said, this.
Talk them through some of these things.
It's been coming up probably over a decade.
Yeah.
yeah.
They're
They're trying for a long time. They got several things to this past session.
But specifically to your question, if it's a course that we sponsor, so if it's one of our online campus program that we sponsor, that would be a qualifying course.
Of course.
okay, all right.
Now, they still have to actually, if it's a team that has tryouts and those kinds of things, they have to make it through the tryouts, just like any other
Correct.
student would, and those kinds of things. So all that stuff still applies, but, you know, historically, we have not allowed students to be able to do this, and now state law says we must.
Now, but is it my understanding though, that they're saying that they have to attempt? But I thought that we can always, because in the past, we can always make that stricter, can we not? And say that they have to attempt or
Well, I
change it to
think that
complete?
The language there of attempt means that they have to, you know, enroll in the course and they have to, you know, participate. in the
Attend
course.
it.
I think that it's not trying to say that it's okay for them to.
I think really what they were
You have
trying to
enroll
say-
and participate in that
Yeah, I
course,
think
you
that's
know.
what they were really trying to say is you don't just enroll, you got to show up and you got to participate, not just
So they
check the
actually
box
have-
to
they
enroll.
can't stay
They
at
actually have
home.
to come to
They
class.
have to come to
Or
class.
if they do
that's-
the online class, they have to log in and we have to keep attendance on that course. It's
And
not-
then,
You can't just say, I'm going to take the class and then not do anything and play. It's the,
and then after the first semester, then they'll get a grade in that course that they attended. And if that grade then disqualifies them from participating beyond that, then that will all, that
I
will all.
don't think anything binds us to treat them differently than we would any other player. So, you know, whether they start or whether they sit the bench, that's on their own performance. And on and I'm assuming on the pay, the play piece, pass to play, but that's the part that's going to be interesting to see how that rolls.
Now, to my knowledge, since this law was passed, we've not had any inquiries yet.
Oh, yeah.
We have in the past, we've had parents that have reached out to us wanting to do this, but because we weren't mandated by law, we've always taken the position that wasn't possible. And so since this has been signed into law, have not yet received any inquiries. from parents that are wanting to do this, but I think it's a matter of time, and we certainly will get parents. that want to-
Do they still have to try out for the team? And if they don't make it,
Absolutely.
they don't make it.
Absolutely.
Dr. Green.
Yes.
Doesn't assure us these.
I think this will probably be a challenge for coaches and different people to implement. If a sport, let's say they want to play on the golf team or something, are they gonna have to pay the same thing that players that belong to the school have to pay?
Yes, there will be all the things that are required for participants on that particular sport will apply to them equally as it will to any other.
I just think it's gonna be very interesting to see how this is implemented across the state and how they manage it. I think it's one thing to put something down on a piece of paper, there's gonna be something else to implement, I think. Hopefully I'm wrong.
I hope the first thing we do is check eligibility in terms of residence.
I'm
Yeah,
sure
that too.
I mean, seriously, just
Part
because,
of our enrollment process.
Yeah.
bring Students, make sure that they are eligible. to attend our schools.
Okay, so we're gonna put this out for public review. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr.
Yeah, it's actually in the further student must meet established age requirements and
All right, Jason Ayers, welcome.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Can you guys hear me good and clear?
What'd you say?
You're good.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure. I'll apologize if you guys, if I come through, if it gets messed up, I apologize for that. But anyway, just going to run down this real quick. You guys just jump in if you've got any questions. First thing is our bus outsource bid. This is just, us needing plenty of people to help work on buses. This is our vendor list for that. Obviously, we need more than one or two, just because we cannot keep up with it all with a little over 200 buses in our fleet. We will start with the lowest ones. Haynes is the one that'll be our primary. They're a local business. They've been servicing the buses for years, but from everything that I know, we'll move on beyond that with our other vendors as well, based on price, need. There's a lot of variables in that. I'm sure any of you could understand that part of it. But we're looking at superintendent recommends approval of the attached list of vendors. We're looking between 250 and 270,000 for that. Obviously, there'll be some flux in that depending on prices and everything, that's associated with parts.
Any questions? Are we gonna look at those supporting documents? There we go.
Jason, is any particular order you go in on these?
Oh, I'm sorry. What'd you say now?
Any particular order you go in? on these products?
What we'll do, if you got the list pulled up, I'm not sure what you guys see on your side. We'll start with Haynes. Obviously, they're the lowest, the lowest price. We'll try to stick with them, but we're not exclusive to them because they can't, they've got other, people they serve. But we'll try to do it in order of price, start with the lowest ones, work our way out. The ones we might use it might be at the top of the list could be a warranty, something that they're specialized in that they could warranty the repair or something like that. So we'll just kind of do it based on the need and what best suits our needs at the time and, what we consider is the best option for us in the situation we may be in.
Okay.
This is exactly what we did this time a year ago with this particular item. We approved that.
Consent agenda? Okay.
Okay.
Next, Jason.
All right, this one here, this was parts and shop supplies, with everything else, we just kind of went with lowest bid when we got these in. Again, we're going to need, use multiple for that, supply chains and different things. Somebody might be out of something we need pretty fast, so we'll default to the next one up, just kind of move around like we need to. Kind of the same thing as our other vendors and stuff, just whatever need we have. Again, we will be price conscious as we move around, ordering different parts, different ones, things like that. But what we're looking at on this one's an estimated of about 770,000.
I
I'm not
missed the total on that. You faded out on us.
$770.
Yeah. Did you guys want to look at that attachment or anything?
We got it, Jason. Thank you.
Okay.
Consent agenda?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, this one here is fire extinguisher and fire suppression system. Now, this one, I'm going to point out, we did not go with the lowest bid. The lowest bid would have been Centos. The only issue we had really with Centos, they are a uniform company, and Centos in the past several years has tried to expand into other arenas. I don't really trust, putting all this on them. The one we chose was Pi Barker. That's their primary business. That's their core business is fire and safety. I did not really want to roll the dice with somebody like Centos at this moment in time, just because I don't have enough background information on them to know if that's something we want to get into. We have special systems on some of our buses, special needs buses. Those systems require servicing, and if there's a problem with them, Pi Barker will turn those things around really fast, to make sure those systems work. We do not really have a good way of checking out how good Centos has done in this. Like I said, they've diversified their business model, and we just felt like staying with who we know, what we've dealt with them for the past few years. Just didn't, like I said, did not want to roll the dice with Centos at this moment in time. Now, next year we may, get the bid from them and they win it, but I think at that point we'll have a little better idea of how good they're doing, in that particular field.
Yeah. Find out some school districts that they service this year.
Yes. Like I said, they really diversified. I don't know. This is just one of those things that I feel more comfortable staying with somebody that's their core business, not a side venture of something they might want to get into. If they get into it and don't do a good job and then they mess up, then we're kind of out there hanging if the service kind of falters. And show up with you guys again and just have to add somebody that we probably should have started with. So that was the only reason behind that.
Yeah, and I definitely don't want to be in this area. It's not somewhere I want to be left hanging out.
Consent agenda?
Right. I agree.
Okay. Fuel.
All right, let's see right here. We've got, next one is fuel and petroleum on lubrication. We did this one with, like the rest of them, they were stuck out on the procurement website. We went with Parental Oil Company. They're the ones we use. They've guaranteed us, primary position. If we have a shortage, obviously we had some concerns a little while back, 6 weeks ago, whatever it was at this point in time with that hacking that went on. They were very proactive to contact us. You guys don't worry about one thing. We've got plenty of reserves. We'll take care of you and all that. And you guys understand how fuel works. It's kind of the same across the board for the most part. Just Boswell's just, got it going on. They'll take care of us. That was the biggest thing. And the way they communicated, with us on the whole thing. We did get a couple of others in there, but again, it was just kind of, where we ended up with Boswell, considering the history and everything like that. So.
You had me down here, scroll down a little bit further on the second page at the top.
I'm sorry.
It's a little different.
30 minutes, 4 hours, or 24 to 48 hours must provide as the average response time.
Yeah,
30 minutes. The next was 4 hours, and the other was somewhere in the next 2 days.
Yeah, well, that goes, that's some of the layers of those decisions. Boswell's just, they're right there. They're kind of a hometown. It's kind of, like a good neighbor kind of thing. They're right there on top of it. If we need anything, they're quick to respond to it. They've always sent people out if we've had questions about anything. We actually had met with their people last week about some oil and different things we had with our DPF systems on the buses, and they're very knowledgeable. And they just real supportive. So yeah, obviously the response time was a big difference there. 30 minutes to get a load of fuel versus, 4 hours and 48 hours. Obviously that's a real good thing.
All right. Well, there's a lot of add-ins.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's where they're out of. And see, the good thing is that's where the terminal is that they pull out of is Athens. That's where the main terminal's at too. So a lot of home field advantage with having Boswell on there.
Okay. Great analogy, like a good neighbor, Jason.
There you go.
I appreciate that.
I was thinking more like if it ain't broke, don't fix it, but that's.
Pretty much. Okay.
Consent agenda?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Tires.
Yes, next one's tires. We went lowest bid. You know, we got the lowest thing. We actually reevaluated some things. We ended up changing from what we had last go around. When you break the pricing down, you guys look at the attachments, you can look at some of the pricing is drastically different. I'm not sure what was going on with that. I've run into this a few times over my years in this business. I don't know what some of these vendors do. When you see, if you go down, you guys got that pulled up, if you go down kind of toward the middle of the first page, maybe a little bit lower, you'll see tire price and you'll see a difference 267 versus 328, things like that. I'm not sure. This is all kind of state contract type thing they do with tires. You just start shaking it down that way and you just kind of start, I don't understand what happens with that. I never have figured that one out, but we obviously, you know, put the fly swatter out on this one and went with lowest bid with the, you know, and it ended up changing the vendor from last year, but that's pretty much where we're at with that lowest bid on this one.
Okay. Consent agenda?
Yes.
Okay. All right, next one, White Fleet Maintenance, clean cut and dry here. We went with lowest bid. We only had 2 put in. We used Connor, which is a local business, which is always a good thing. The other one was actually Yancey had put out there, but the labor rate being 140 for Yancey and Connors was 50, that was kind of a no-brainer. Connors has done pretty good with our White Fleet, keeping things up, and we do some of the repairs in-house and we can do them pretty fast. So just kind of zig and zag, but that was kind of a cut and dry deal. We're looking at an estimated of $60,000 for the year, just, you know, depending on, you know, how prices fluctuate and stuff is what we're recommending.
Their warranty's much better too.
Okay. Consent agenda? Last but not least.
Yes, sir. Radios, Alpha Communications, if I'm thinking right, they are the only one we received a bid from. Let me look at this and see. Yes, they're the only ones, excuse me, they're the only ones that submitted a bid. And Helen was real good to reach out and kind of keep poking the other ones with a stick, so to speak, but we didn't get anything. It's just one of those, there's not a lot of companies out there. Alpha's a real good, that's that like a good neighbor thing again. They'll treat you real good. I've got a long history with them myself in my previous county I was with. Alpha goes above and beyond with anything we do. They're good people and they're good to deal with, but everybody kind of gets locked into their customer base and you don't see a whole lot change from there. So that's pretty much what you're seeing here is that, like I said, they're the only ones that put in. We tried, made multiple attempts with others to get them, but I guess everybody's got kind of their market share they want. And they didn't want to get into something else, but that's kind of where we're at with them.
Okay.
We're looking at about $25,000, and that goes back to how much equipment we may need through the year, something like that.
Consent agenda?
Yes.
All right, sir. Appreciate your time.
All right.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you. You have a great night.
Thank you.
All right.
All righty. No committees meeting right now, none of these. Next meeting will be the 13th. Any questions, comments? Or not? Tomorrow night, we'll be here at 6 o'clock.
10
for
till.
10 till.